I didn't want this to happen to me. I didn't want to get scammed and lose all my money in Thailand. I've read the comments on some of your stories, and it's as if the commenters think that we do these things on purpose. I can promise you categorically that we don't. I believe what happened to me was cruel and calculated. It doesn't feel like it was a mistake or something that happened over the passing of time. It feels as if I was targeted right from the start, and that's what has caused me all these problems that I'm currently facing. When I went to Thailand originally, I did so not to somebody who knew anything about the dangers that went along with getting into relationships in the country. I didn't know that many people, and I mean thousands and thousands of people, had already fallen prey to the charms of a bar girl. I went into this on the understanding that this was a mutually beneficial relationship. A relationship where finally I was able to take charge in my life, as opposed to always being the one forced to follow what everybody else told me to do. That's what makes it so difficult, because I didn't expect my whole life to be destroyed over the space of a few years. Some people will say that it's my fault and that I deserve it. But for me, I personally believe I'm 100% blameless, and even after I've spent so much time thinking about it, and trying to come to terms with it, it's not me who did this to me. It's a girl that I loved from Thailand who worked in a bar that did this to me, and it's because of that I want to shout out to other guys out there who are currently starting off or who are in the early stages of a relationship with a bar girl that it might be fun, it might feel like it's real, and deep down there's nothing telling you that it isn't real because it doesn't make any sense to you to understand why it's not. But the thing that I got wrong the most was that I did what I did on the understanding that people who had less than me would respect things out of me, not scam things out of me. I thought that by being nice and kind and friendly and generous, that these traits were looked at as big positives, and nobody's going to scam you for being so nice. In fact, they're going to thank you and want to make you just as happy in return as you're making them. If you still hold on to such romantic notions, forget about them as quickly as you can, because I can promise you that nobody gives a damn about you, especially a Thai bar girl. I didn't feel like I was asking for too much. In fact, I thought I was providing more for the relationship than she was, and not only that, a huge amount more. When I met her in that little piece of paradise on Soi Bukkao, I didn't look at the transactionality of it as actually being transactional in the same sense that many people might. I thought the bars were dating factories where the less fortunate in Thailand could meet someone to sweep them away, and I can remember walking into that bar and taking a seat at the counter. The whole bar emanated this pink glow. It was open-fronted, and there was a seating area looking out to the road where there was already one guy sat there and a girl talking to him. I walked right in, and it must have only been around 4 p.m, and the place, aside from that one guy, was very quiet. I was always someone who preferred going into bars that were quiet. I thought you got a lot more personalised experience, and I never understood the guys talking about how they preferred the busier bars. Quiet was best for me. After I took a seat, I noticed there was a girl working behind the bar, and she was absolutely stunning. The way she spoke to me, the way she acted, it was as if she knew exactly what she was doing, yet it was also as if at that moment we weren't actually in a bar. I was immediately attracted to her, but the first thing she did was link arms with the girl standing right next to her, and she said to me, "She like you, nah?" But keep in mind, I hadn't even spoken to that girl once, and she was trying to get me to buy her a drink. I had no interest in that girl whatsoever. I was interested in her. When I told her that I would buy her a drink instead, she quickly unlinked arms with that girl and poured herself out a sang som and soda water with a little bit of coke. I didn't notice the bar filling up with more people over the passing hours, and because she was working behind the bar, she was interacting with loads of the guys coming in. They were all joking with her, and she seemed to be in her element. But before long, she's leaning over the bar, and she's kissing me. And she says, "You pay bar me?" From that point on, she was the only thing important in my life. I think it's important to also say why I first was even in Thailand, and the thing is, I don't even really know. I mean, I know why I was there. There was an older gentleman that lived in my area at home, and I was very friendly with him. He was one of my best friends for as long as I can remember, and he was my drinking partner on many occasions when I wanted to escape the drudgery of life. I looked up to him as someone further along in life than me and who had more knowledge and wisdom. When he arrived back in England one day after travelling, something he did a lot of, and he always tried to convince me to do the same, but when he walked through the door of the pub with this pretty Thai girl on his arm, and then how he went on to explain how he met her in Bangkok and got married, it only seemed sensible for me to go and try to see if this was available to everybody, not just the lucky ones like him. He was in his 60s, I was in my 40s, and I'd been divorced just before I turned 40. People deal with divorce in different ways, and I dealt with it very badly, and I found I wasn't able to work as well anymore. I wasn't able to be the person I thought I was anymore when she decided to de-work me. And if you haven't heard that term before, I think it's one that we should put a lot more focus on. What I mean by de-work is that I worked hard for years, and she didn't work hard for years, and I could never understand how there is even such a thing as no-fault divorce. We're told theft is illegal, but there seem to be lots of legalized ways that people can remove money from others, and that's what I felt like. Not only the loss of money and dignity, it was also the fact that I really loved her and expected to stay with her forever. It was my good friend who arrived in the pub one day with this beautiful Thai girl who got me through that hard time. And when someone you look up to and respects tells you you need to go and see Thailand for yourself, you pay very close attention to him and take his advice because it means something. So that's why I went to Thailand. I went to Thailand with the hopes and expectations of a guy who thinks that this was his last chance. This was my last chance, and if it didn't work, I didn't know what I was going to have to do. My friend didn't convince me straight away to go to Thailand. After seeing him with his wife that first time and after he brought it up, it took about a month of seeing him every few days where he refused to stop talking about Thailand before I did make up my mind that I really needed to go and see what it was all about. I think part of me was putting off the inevitable. Part of me had already decided the first time he spoke about it that I was going, but I wanted to hold on to that feeling of anticipation and excitement. I was always someone who was disappointed because nothing ever lived up to my expectations, and I wanted to hold on to the descriptions of Thailand that he had fed me. But when I finally got round to booking the ticket, a big part of me was expecting to get there and call him after arriving, saying that I didn't like it here. I was worried I wouldn't like it. My first time flying to Thailand was on Emirates with the changeover in Dubai, and when I was on the last flight, that was still the time when they handed out arrival cards and you had to fill those in, which they don't have anymore. And even having to do something like that made me feel a bit nervous because most places that I visited before, you didn't have anything like that. It kind of felt like I was going into this strange world that was completely different to anything I knew. And part of me expected it to be nothing but a third world backwater where guys like me ran the risk of having bad things happen to us. And I don't mean financially scammed. I couldn't have been more wrong though. This was before Suvarnabhumi airport was complete. It was nearly ready, but at this time all the international flights went into Don Muang, and I still, even to this day, hold on to that first arrival in Thailand as being like the real arrival in Thailand, when Thailand was on the crossroads of old, for example, the old airport, and new, for example, the new shiny glitzy airport, that I felt over the years didn't match with the Thailand that I arrived in originally. I took on board my friend's advice when I got there and got a taxi to a place called Sukhumvit Soy 13, and when I arrived, I checked into the Miami hotel, and that was the start of my Thailand love affair. Bangkok was everything that my friend described it as being, and also so much more. I sometimes find myself laughing when I see videos today where people talk about how cheap Thailand is, yet I think those people have no idea how cheap it actually used to be. It wasn't that I needed it to be cheap, I wasn't broke, But during my first few days there, I was often left puzzled as to how things could cost such a small amount of money. My friend had told me all about the bars around that part of Bangkok, and he would just describe them in a particular way, and it didn't take me long to understand that Thailand had made me completely forget about everything going on in my life at home. When I forced myself to think about home, I tried to forget about it as quickly as I could, because all that mattered to me was Thailand. My friend had not spoken about Pattaya. I don't think he had ever been, but I kept hearing it over the first week of being in Bangkok, and I decided to go there and have a look to see what it was like. That was when Thailand got even better. It just felt like Thailand was the missing piece to the puzzle that my life had missing, and it fit so perfectly into the empty gap, and I didn't feel that I was empty anymore. I had a new lease on life. I was me again after years of being depressed and thinking about what happened when my wife divorced me. Pattaya reaffirmed everything I felt in Bangkok, and it amplified the feelings I had in Bangkok. And when I walked into that bar on Soi Bukkao and met that girl working behind the bar, everything just seemed to connect together so well, and there was nothing else that I wanted to do more than to be in Thailand. I think about it often, how I would have wanted to describe myself if somebody asked me after I found out about Thailand. What I'm trying to say is that if I was in a conversation with multiple other people at the same time, for example, and you ask somebody else, "What do you do?" Somebody might say, "Well, I'm a doctor." Someone else might say, "I'm a fireman," or whatever it is they was. But for me, the only answer I could have given to a question like that, "What do you do?" I would have just said, "Oh, I'm a Thailand guy." It felt like that was who I was meant to be. It made me feel like that was who I was more than anything else. And because of that, because of this sense of being at one with Thailand, I think that's why I got myself into such a bad situation, because it was as though me being in Thailand was who I was. And by not being there, I wouldn't have been able to be who I was. I don't know if that makes any sense, but Thailand really did grab a hold of me, and I felt like it didn't want to let go. I don't know how much you can use, but that did something to me. She made me completely forget about my ex-wife. She made me understand that I could be happy, and she did things that my ex-wife would never have done. I can remember the following morning when she was still there, but I don't know why I remember this. But she used to grind her teeth when she slept, and I was just so amazed that I was on a level playing field with this incredibly beautiful girl. I can't remember exactly how old I was. I would probably say maybe 47, and she was 20, but from then on, she was who I was meant to be with. I only had a week left of my stay in Thailand, but I was convinced by day 2 of being there that this is where I was meant to be. I thought to myself that I hadn't really done much work since I got divorced. I'd just been feeling sorry for myself for a number of years, and I was even then eating through my savings that I had left after divorce. I probably had about £130,000, but you have to remember at the time that that was around 10 million baht, and everything back then was so much cheaper, it really did feel like that was enough money to last forever. She stayed with me for that whole week in Pattaya. I found out very early on she was from Nong Khai, which was on the Lao border, and that just so happened to be where my friend's wife was from, which is really why it resonated with me when she told me. What I'm trying to get across is that I was the happiest that I'd been for such a long time, probably my whole life, and I'd never been as happy like that. Thailand did that to me. It changed me in more ways than one, and at the end of that week that I spent with her, when it was time for me to go home, the thought of leaving her and going back to that was something that sounded so awful that I had to convince myself that I would be back in Thailand as soon as possible. If you add up all these feelings that I was having, this amazing love of Thailand, feeling like myself again for the first time in what felt like forever, if you added all those things together with the feelings I was having for her, that's when things started to go wrong. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with the fact that things started to go wrong before I even moved to Thailand. It was as if what happened to me was predetermined. When it was time for me to leave Thailand, I already decided that I wanted her to be part of my life. I know many people say that they agree with the girls that they meet, that they will help support them so that they don't have to continue working in the bar. And I was no exception to that, although I didn't realise that many people did the same thing at the time. I trusted that she did go back to where she was from in Nong Khai, and I told her I wasn't going to be going for very long anyway, I should be back soon. I gave her about 20,000 baht and said I would send more if I couldn't make it back as soon as I expected, but I did think I would be back within a month because I decided right there and then that I was retiring early to Thailand with the money I had. Retirement to me meant not having to work, doing a job I didn't want to do. It didn't necessarily mean I would never work again, but it would mean that I was open to the possibility of doing something if the opportunity was right. The first thing I did when I was back in England was take my friend out for a beer to thank him. As soon as he saw me, he could tell I liked it. He had a smile on his face as if he was trying to say I told you so, and he did tell me so. We went on to talk about how much I loved Thailand and how much he loved Thailand, but I never really understood why he brought his wife to live in England. He was fully retired and didn't need to work at all ever again, but he never really explained why he didn't choose to live in Thailand instead. I was calling my girl every day when I was back, and I was quite confident that she was where she was meant to be. I heard a lot of background noise when I was talking to her. There were chickens and dogs barking and people speaking around her in a way that appeared to be different to how it would sound in Pattaya. But like I said, I had about £130,000 cash, but I actually started out with nearly 200,000 when I got divorced. I just ate through money, not feeling like I wanted to do anything. I also owned my house, and I just decided to rent that out for a small income. I could get £400 a month for that house back then, and that was nearly 30,000 baht. You forget just how different it was back then. At the time, 30,000 baht felt like no money at all. That would be one of my biggest problems though, valuing the Thai baht in my mind at the same value as it was when I arrived until I had to leave. That's what it was worth, and it was as if I was waiting for it to go back to where it should be. Anyone from the UK should remember that before you had a £300 cash limit when you went to the ATM. Back then you could get 20,000 baht out in Thailand, and that would be under the £300 limit. And the reason I'm talking about that is to say that at the time, the amount of money I had did appear to be everything I would need to be successful in Thailand. I was flying back to Thailand permanently only 3 weeks after I arrived in England, and when I did get back, I checked into the Miami hotel again, and the following day, she's there with me. I went to the bus station to meet her when she got back, so that gave me confidence that she did go and wait for me. It felt like we hadn't spent any time apart though, and I didn't really know what to do next. I hadn't thought much further than meeting her, making sure that we were together, but that was pretty much all I thought about. I didn't know where I wanted to live, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but most of all, I had no idea what she would expect out of me. I was of the understanding that I would be the one paying for everything, I knew that, but I had no idea that she would want anything out of me other than to be taken care of, because I couldn't see anything that she needed to use money for. We spent the first week in the Miami hotel, and I still reminisce about staying there. I've stayed there so many times over the years, and I really do feel like it's a mainstay of that part of Bangkok. After the week was up though there, we'd been talking a long time and we decided that living in Pattaya would be the better option. I really did love Bangkok, but I loved Pattaya even more. We got a taxi down to Pattaya, checked into a hotel there, and for the first week of being there, it was just like settling in mode. But after that week, I found a place to rent, and she was just living with me straight away. The place I rented was only 6,000 baht, and it was one of those places with high electric bills, but even still, I wasn't going over 10,000 baht a month for rent and utilities. And then, I suppose, many people would say like clockwork, after we'd been living together for approximately 2 months, by this point I thought that we were going to stay together forever, she started talking about something when we were going out one evening having a meal. I hadn't expected this, and I think she caught me off guard that I didn't even know what I was agreeing to or what I was doing. If you know Pattaya, you will know Soi 8. I'm not sure if it's there today, but there was a little restaurant about halfway down the street where we were eating. I'm having the time of my life. I've got a beer in front of me, a beautiful girl sat in front of me, and a decent meal in front of me. and the whole thing is going to be costing me less than 10 quid. But she says to me, "Why don't you give me any money?" That's how she said it, exactly. "Why don't you give me any money?" Actually, she said it more like, "Why you no give money me?" And then she went on to say that most foreign boyfriends and husbands give allowances to their girlfriends or wives. I was quite confused when she said that, because I thought we were in a relationship, and the first thing I said to her was, "What do you need money for?" I indicated that I was paying for the meal that we were eating and the drinks. I indicated that I was paying for the place that we were living together, and if she needed something, I would buy it. There didn't seem to be anything that she actually needed money for, and I wanted her to explain. She started talking about how when she was working, she sent most of her money to the family in the village because they didn't have any money and they had to look after her son. That was the first time I found out that she had a son. The problem was, though, I already liked her. I should have known there and then, though, that this was going to end badly, but against my better judgment, I just said in a very plain voice, "Why didn't you tell me you had a son?" I can't even remember what she said to me. I asked her how much money she sent to her family every month, and she said usually 10,000 baht. And you have to remember that back then that was a lot of money, 10,000 baht in Thailand, especially in a village. You would see people working full-time jobs, and they might have only been getting 4, 5 or 6,000 baht a month. So I didn't think she was telling the whole truth, and I asked if that was actually right. Anyway, by the end of the conversation, I had agreed to give her 12,000 baht every single month as an allowance, so that she could keep giving money to her family and have a little bit to herself to buy things, even though I was the one buying everything for her anyway. I still don't know why I agreed to that. All I needed to do was look up and down the street, and there were lots of other options available. But I didn't see it like that. I saw this as being in love with her, and that was all that mattered. And at the time, it didn't really feel like it was very much money. It was still only less than £200. I gave her the first 12,000 baht that day, and the way she held the money should have told me everything I needed to know. Like she deserved it and she'd earned it in a way, but I didn't see it that way. But we just continued living together, and I'm as happy as ever. During the first few months of us being together, we were spending maybe 10 days in Pattaya, and then we'd drive to places close by for a few days' break. I'd already bought a car, but I did buy that in my own name because you can, and my favourite place quickly became Koh Cement, which wasn't too far away. That island back then was my escape, and we had some amazing times there. But it was when we were there, about 3 months after I got back from England, that she started talking about the family and how they were talking about her living with someone when she wasn't married. One thing that you have to understand about Thailand is that things don't make sense. It didn't make sense that she was talking about this, yet the family seemed to have no problem with what she did before we met. Surely being in a relationship with one person was more dignified than doing what she did before. But when you say something like that, you would be given a blank stare as if to say, "I don't know what you're talking about." I would also say that back then things were a lot more old-fashioned even than they are today. People getting married today may still be expected to do things, but nowhere near at the same level that they were before. And because she brought it up, I felt like it would only be right to go and visit her family, just to introduce myself and show that I was serious. The fact that she asked me to marry her, that seemed to be the wrong way around. But I wasn't rushing things, but I was happy. So I thought that I needed to just move ahead. It was as if, though, she only cared about what people in the village thought. She didn't care what I thought. All she cared about was that. I still scratched my head and tried to understand what everything was all about and how her mind actually worked. After we returned to Pattaya, I agreed to go and visit her family. We only spent 2 days in Pattaya, and then we're driving into Isan, a part of the country I'd never been to before, and a part of the country that I'd heard nothing about. I wasn't a guy who hung around with other expats at all, really. I just kept myself to myself. I didn't know much about the part of Thailand I was entering, other than that was where most of the bar girls were from. It was a long drive, and when we finally arrived at the family's house, it was like entering a different world altogether. If you picture Bangkok and Pattaya, those cities were modern and vibrant and exciting, yet where we were was nothing like that. It was as if we had gone back in time by 50 years, and I learned more about Thailand in 2 days we spent there than I had throughout the whole time I spent in Thailand up until then. The house they had was very primitive. The bathroom was outside, and you had to have a shower by scooping out water with a plastic bucket and pouring it over yourself. The toilet was a squat toilet, and it was surrounded by mud. We were there in the rain season, and if you needed to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, you had to get out of the house, put on some plastic-style flip-flops, and then tread carefully through the mud to get to the bathroom. I never understood why they didn't make it a bit easier than that. It's not like it would have cost a lot of money to have made the whole thing far more comfortable, but it was as if they didn't care and that was what they were used to. The thing was, I didn't see it for what it was at the time, but for them this was just normal. For her, she was behaving like everything around her was normal, and she couldn't understand why for me this was so strange and difficult to adapt to. And again it brings up the important questions. If that was normal to her, then why did she feel like she needed more than that? If that was normal to her, but she didn't like it, I don't know. But during those 2 days, I learned to appreciate the fact that I didn't have to live like that. More importantly, the thing that I got wrong the most, I felt very sorry for the people living there at the moment in time, and when it was discussed between me and her and the family if I could give them extra allowance, it only seemed right because of how bad the conditions they were living in. It was weird seeing her son, who was 3 years old. That was really weird. But I think I'm happy. I think I'm doing the right thing. And I left after having agreed to up her allowance that she can share with her family to 20,000 baht a month without even thinking that that was far more than anybody else in the village would be getting. It felt good though, yet only good because I thought I was doing it out of the kindness of my own heart and they appreciated and respected me for it. If I'd have known that it was taken almost like they expected it and they weren't even remotely thankful for it, I might have questioned what I was doing. When we were driving back to Pattaya, I had also agreed that we would get married at a time that the family saw appropriate. I was just happy in the moment to feel like I was making a difference. I felt like I was making a difference to her life, to the lives of her family members, and I didn't mind that it was costing me money that I didn't really want to spend. I was talking with her about how happy I was to have met her, and she seemed to be the same. I don't know why I overlooked the fact that the longer I stayed with her, the less like she was when I met her, and I met her because of who she was. It was as if who she wasn't who she was, and wasn't who I wanted her to be. But I was happy, and I just didn't catch on to this. I can remember that drive stopping off at a place on the side of the road to have a meal. Usually we went to places that I chose because I wanted to eat anything that wasn't Thai food. I didn't like it. But these places were Thai and there was no other choice, so I let her choose and order anything she wanted. What arrived was food that, even though I'd been in Thailand for a number of months already, I'd never even wanted to entertain trying. And again, I don't take a step back and think she's different to me. She likes different things to me. She's younger than me. She's got a son. She's got a family who I'm giving money to. Not once do I step back and think perhaps she's doing this for money. Watching her eat that fermented fish like it was delicious blue cheese should have made me think that we were two different people and it wouldn't work out. I hold these little things about her that I'm drawn to as being unique and exciting and something that's making my life better. I don't know what it is, but I'm trying to justify what I did to myself. Because at the time I'm not thinking anything. I'm thinking things occasionally, but it's looking back at that time and having these thoughts, thinking why was I putting myself in that position and not thinking that this was crazy. But back in Pattaya, life was just continuing and I am happy. We haven't had one argument since we've been together, we haven't fallen out, she doesn't appear to have done anything negative, and I feel this is a forever sort of thing and she's in on it with me. I thought she was with me for the right reasons. A few days after we got back, her family told us the date that they wanted us to get married, and it just so happened to coincide with the time that my friend was visiting Thailand with his wife, who, as just so happened, as I said, was from the same town. So I invited him to the wedding and he gladly took me up on the offer. He arrived in Pattaya a week before we were due to get married, and I went with my girlfriend together with him and his wife back to Koh Cement, and the conversations that we had together while our partners were off doing whatever it is they were doing, it was just similar to what we talked about back at the pub in England. While my friend was still living in England, he still spent half his time in Thailand, and it was moments like that that reaffirmed the belief that what I was doing was not only the right thing, but I'd be stupid if I didn't do it. When you think what the alternative would be, the alternative would be being by myself, living a boring existence in England. Here, I'm not by myself. I've got an amazing girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, who's everything I've always looked for, and we're sat on a tropical island, literally on the beach, and we've got beers for £1 each in front of us. And it's as if Thailand is there and it's amazing and you need to accept it for what it is and enjoy it. Everything that you see reaffirms your beliefs that what you're doing is the right decision. It's not like you feel that you're doing something a bit risky. The opposite felt true. It would feel risky not to be in this relationship and take things seriously because the alternative was England. When England is your benchmark, everything else seems so fantastic that you don't stop to think that in the real world, a relationship like this wouldn't work. Maybe I'm just trying to explain myself so that the sorts of people who comment on your videos about the guy being just another simp, a word I hate, I want them to understand that this wasn't done from any other angle than thinking that it didn't make sense why it wouldn't be real. That's what I'm trying to get across. It was interesting getting married. My friend was there as well, and the day before we got married, we actually went to see his wife's village, which was only 20 minutes away from my now wife's village. He'd started building a house there for the family. He said he was building it, and the idea came up so that when he visited, they'd have somewhere to stay. But when they weren't there, the family would be able to live there. He said it wasn't his intention to live there permanently, and he knew he wasn't able to own it, but he could afford to build a house, so that's why he was doing it. I think that was a very big mistake going to look at that, and I think his wife was talking to mine about me doing the same for her family, because the thing was, the house wasn't expensive. It would have been about £20,000. The one that he was building actually started to look really good and it wasn't finished yet. And while it wasn't brought up to me during the wedding ceremony, it wasn't brought up to me at all when we were in the village. When we got back to Pattaya and started living as a married couple, she brought it up to me in such a way as if to say, we're married now and we're going to need to visit the family quite often. And because of that, it would be better for us if we had somewhere more comfortable, so you don't have to have a bad time when we're there. I guess that she must have been clever to mention it like that, because for some reason I agreed. I agreed to build a house for the family, and before long, we'd been back up to the village, discussed with a local builder exactly what it was going to be like, and I'd agreed to spend 1.5 million baht to build this house without even realising what I was doing. I paid for it in installments, but that took a big chunk of money. But the way she worded it to me like it would be our house and we could live there when we were visiting, it made sense. I blamed my friend, may he rest in peace, for building a house and for his wife giving my wife the same idea. I thought I was close to her family. I thought I was part of the family. And when you feel like you're part of a family, you want to help them as much as you can because you think they would do the same for you. The time is going by and it's not like I'm just handing over so much money all at once, but we can't have had that house built for 6 months when she came to me saying that her family wanted to get more land and also purchase machinery so they could work on other people's land for them when it came to doing things like harvesting. She brought it up with me as if it was going to be a family business, and because I thought I was part of the family, I didn't just tell her no straight away. I didn't tell her yes straight away either. I wanted to understand exactly what this was going to be about. But when she said that the family wanted to meet us and talk about things and they would explain clearly, I agreed, thinking there was no harm in just going to hear them out. I'd probably say we're in about 2010 at this point, by the way, and the pound has lost a considerable amount of value. And I was one of those guys, who I would probably call an idiot, who kept all his money in England and watched as the exchange rate got worse and worse and worse, which made the whole situation a lot worse. When I moved to Thailand, I had the equivalent of about 10 million baht. Now I had the equivalent of about half of that after paying for things such as the house, and also watching the sickening plummet of the pound. But I'm thinking that this is just a temporary glitch and it's bound to get back to where it should be eventually. That was a big mistake. When we arrived at our house, before we left, I'd already picked out which bedroom we were going to have. I'd bought the furniture that I wanted for our bedroom, But it quickly became apparent that her parents had decided that they wanted that bedroom instead. The bedroom that her parents were meant to have went to her son, who at this point had just about started to sleep in his own room, and the last spare bedroom went to her younger sister. That meant that we didn't have a bedroom to sleep in, and had to sleep on the floor in the living room. Imagine that. This house that was sold to me as being a house that would be ours to live in when we visit, and I can choose which room I want, to be the house that I built that belongs to the family, that I can stay in just as a guest. I didn't see the point about getting upset, and at least it was more comfortable than the last place, but it cost me all that money. Anyway, we speak to the family for a while, and they're explaining to me, through her who's doing the translations, what they wanted to do. They even took me for a walk around the village, pointing out the land that they wanted to buy, and pointing out what machinery would look like, and they said they needed about 2 million baht for this family business, as they put it. That's how they described it to me, as being a family business. But I told them that that was a lot of money and I can't really afford to just hand that over. But that was the thing. They didn't say they wanted it. The idea was that I would invest the money and they would pay me back with 5% interest. They put it towards me as being a business that I could do as well. And I'm just helping them out, not like that. It's actually a business. And in return for them helping, I should make about 100,000 baht over 10 years. It felt like a long time to commit to, but I believed them when they said that that was what they were going to do. I believed my wife that this was a genuine thing and that's what they were really going to do. And also I thought that it would make me a little bit of money on top to make up for the diminishing exchange rate. I am embarrassed to admit that I gave them 2 million baht on the understanding that I would be paid back 20,000 a month for 10 years. You see, if that was it and they didn't pay me back and things went wrong and they were apologetic, I would have been furious and devastated, but I would have thought that it was them trying their best and it was an honest mistake, and that they tried but it didn't work. But over the next year, they paid me back without fail every single month on time, and some months they were actually paying back a bit more than 20,000. So I was happy that it seemed like they were keeping up to their end of the bargain. At this point, I'm getting really angry with the exchange rate because I moved to Thailand on the basis of it remaining somewhat close to how I found it. But now it's so much worse. I'm renting out my house back in England, and I think I might as well sell it because I needed the money. I needed to be in a position where I should have been in if the exchange rate was where it should have been. So I put my house on the market and sold it. I got £80,000 for that, and I left the money in England, waiting for the exchange rate to get better. After they paid me back without fail for a year, and probably actually a few months more than that, that's when they came to me again saying that they wanted to expand even more, but this time they wanted me and my wife to be a bigger part of it because they needed more money. Another 2 million baht, they said, more land and more equipment, and the business is going well and they wanted to expand it even more. Because they were already paying me back and I felt like I was making money out of this, and because this one was meant to give me back an income of 10,000 baht a month on top of them paying me back, it seemed to be a good opportunity to make some money as well as help out her and the family. I gave them another 2 million, and when the time came to pay, she told me that they needed a bit more time because they're still getting things ready and they haven't put everything right yet. Everything should be okay next month, she said, just wait a bit. I didn't think twice, just a month. They've always paid before, so I just let it slide and got on with life. When the time came for them to pay next time, and they didn't pay then, and then she's making up even more excuses, and I said we need to go and see the family because this isn't right. We drove up there and there seemed to be a hive of activity, yet when the discussion of money came around, they were always evasive, claiming that it was invested and they hadn't got a return yet. I don't know exactly what it was about, but what I'm trying to say is that I didn't see any of that money back ever again. They paid me back, giving me a sense of confidence, and I gave them more, and that amount of money was over 3.5 million baht, as well as the house. And now I'm looking at my situation and everything seems to have gone from being absolutely amazing to being absolutely awful in a very short amount of time. I'm sorry to talk about the exchange rate again, but I'm waiting for it to go back to where I thought it should be and it's not happening. And I probably would have waited forever because it never did and it just continued to get worse since then. But I built my whole life around the exchange rate remaining close to about 75 baht for £1. If I transferred all my money to Thailand when I moved there, I would have been so much better off. But now I've got less money than what I sold my house for, and I'm not getting anything back from the family. I stopped giving the family an allowance after I invested into the business with them, and they hadn't paid me back for 6 months at this point. And then she comes to me, saying that the family needs an allowance again because things aren't working out well with the business. She just dropped it on me just like that. Things didn't work out with the business. Tough luck for all the money that you put into it. Now the family needs some more money because they don't have enough to live on. I think that was when I realised that I'd been incredibly stupid. But I was so heavily invested in her family, and in my life in Thailand, that I felt like if I didn't agree, things could just go wrong so quickly. It felt like I would be throwing away everything that I'd already lost. It was like I felt a connection to all the money I'd given away. I felt a connection to the millions of baht that I lost, to the house that I built, that if I didn't agree to give them this allowance, I would no longer have that connection, and all that money would be gone and that would be it. I wanted to cling on to the hope that I would get back what I put in, or at least benefit in some way from what I paid, so I agreed to give them back another 20,000 a month, just because it made me feel like I wasn't losing everything that I'd already lost. I should have cut my losses, but instead I added to them, and it was a fast and slippery slope for me from there. My relationship at this point was starting to get strained because I was panicking about money all the time. I'm going through so much money. Everything in Thailand seems to be going up in price so much. And also, I'm getting a lot less money for my English money now. Thailand doesn't feel cheap anymore like it used to feel. It doesn't feel like I can get by on what I had anymore. And because of that, I'm starting to enter depression. I'm going out by myself and getting drunk more times than I did before. But I'm doing that because I don't know what else to do. I still have brief moments of happiness when we're on an island such as Koh Samet, but I'm always rudely brought back to reality when I think about my finances and my position in life, and it became quite apparent quite quickly that I needed to make more money. Needing to make more money hastened my demise in Thailand because I started looking for different business opportunities that could give me some money. Before I thought about 10,000 baht like it was nothing, £130, and it would last for a long time going to different places. Now 10,000 baht was an amount of money that you could live on badly for a week. It was so different, and it was so quickly how things changed in Thailand. Foolishly, I decided to go with her to the village, regardless of everything her family had done, and we went to live there in the house that I built. We were given the smallest bedroom, even though her parents were gladly enjoying the furniture that I bought for my own room and hadn't given me any money back. But they didn't seem to care. They should have cared about what they did. They should have put their life on the line to get that money back for me because it was more important to me than it was to them, at least for me. But we moved there to save money and also to try to make money from a business. I don't think there's any point me detailing anything else from here because everything went wrong and I lost everything over the course of the next year. I invested in a number of projects, but nothing worked. I was still giving the family an allowance, and she was incredibly distant. Nothing like the beautiful girl that I met standing behind that bar in Soi Buakhao. Everything came crashing down when she came to me one day saying that they needed some money for something, or rather the family was doing something. And instead of giving it to her like I would have done most times, or saying no maybe in a few days, I completely laid into her as if everything had been building up over the past months and years and it had all come out at once. I just said to her, "Who do you and your family think you are?" The family comes rushing in and looks at me like I'm the devil, not understanding that they've destroyed my life by taking all my money and doing it in a way that made me feel like I was part of the family. I was never part of the family. I was just an uncomfortable addition to the family that was put up with in exchange for money. My wife and I separated that day, and I drove straight back to Pattaya, and all I had left was the car and about 100,000 baht cash. I'd allowed myself to get close to zero, and all I could do was sell the car, get some money back for that, and return home. By this point, my friend had already passed away, and his Thai wife had all of a sudden come into a load of money. I saw her as she was just getting ready to leave England back to Thailand, and you could tell that she was going to waste all the money, and family members were going to have times that they didn't deserve to have. It was just wasted on them, and it made me think that both of us had been really stupid. Both of us were under the illusion that Thailand was a place that respected us and that the people there that we got into relationships with respected us. And while they might get things out of us, they really appreciated the fact that we were with them and they could have things that they perhaps shouldn't have had. When I finally understood that her and her family didn't appreciate anything that I did for them whatsoever, it was already too late and my life was already ruined. I would like to report that I did get back on my feet and I went back to Thailand, just tried to explain to myself what I did. When I looked round the places I used to hang out and think about the things I used to do, I just looked at that old version of myself with scorn, as if to say, how did you not see what was actually going on there? You were played from the start, and the worst thing of all was, you didn't know you were being played until you lost everything that you worked for. I blame myself now, but actually I don't. I blame her and her family for thinking that they deserved things that they shouldn't have had.